Hello everyone, welcome to MyTech School Training. In this session, we are going to talk about cloud computing. What is a cloud computing? The agenda of the session is what is a cloud computing? Definition of your cloud computing. What is the advantages and disadvantages of your cloud computing? We'll also going to talk about the security issues with respect to your cloud computing and how you can use this cloud computing in terms of the use cases. We talk about what are the different areas where you can use this cloud computing, and at the end we are going to give you a demo with respect to different cloud computing. So let's start our journey towards cloud computing. Now the first question comes in, what is a cloud computing? If I'll ask you very simple, what is a cloud computing? In a simple definition, the simple definition of the cloud computing is the delivery of computing services or resources over the internet. These resources can be servers, storage, networking tool, database, any software, anything. Whatever you are going to access over the internet, we call them as a cloud computing. Now the question comes in, why there's lots of buzzword across the cloud computing. The reason behind, now the companies which is offering this cloud computing are giving you very cheap services. That's why lots of companies are moving to the cloud computing. But factual is, this cloud computing, if I say that I'm using since last more than 10 to 15 years, that is the true. Why? Because I was using my Gmail, my Hotmail since last many years, and everything I'm accessing through the internet. So that's why I'm saying we are using this cloud computing since last many years, and it's not new. Now when you talk about the cloud computing also give you enable the companies to consume our resources as a utility. It means when you talk about the utility like water or electricity. So the way you use your water and electricity, we can use our computing resources in the same fashion. It means whatever you are going to consume, just pay for it. Like in electricity, if you consume 100 unit of electricity, just pay for it. Like water, if you consume 100 liter of water, just pay for it. This will help the companies to consume and pay instead of building their own infrastructure in their own premises. And the companies who's offering these services like computing services are called cloud providers or cloud service providers. The famous are Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle, IBM, DigitalOcean, and many more. So these all are cloud companies who's providing the services to the general public. The basic definition of the cloud computing says that, or in terms if I want to know what is the definition of the cloud computing, the basic definition or definition of the cloud computing says that cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand access to a shared pool of computing resources or configurable computing resources that you can rapidly provision and released with the minimum effort or without any help from the service provider. Now this is the basic definition of the cloud computing, but if I want to understand in detail what does it mean of this definition, let's open our whiteboard and try to understand it. Let's assume that we have one physical server. So we are talking about what do you mean by the resource pooling. So I have one physical server. There's a one physical server which have a 10 GB of RAM and say 5 processor. Let's take an example, 5 processor, 10 GB of RAM. In this server, I'm going to install my virtual machine. I'm going installing my virtual machine. So what is a virtual machine? Virtual machine is nothing but a file which consume resources from this physical machine. So let's create a, assume that I have created a few virtual machine here. This virtual machine may get approx, one may have a say 2 GB RAM and one processor. Second may have a 1 GB RAM, one processor. Another way may have a 3 GB RAM and two processors, something like that. But all these resources are actually you have shared on with this physical virtual machine. So that's what we called a resource pooling. So I'm pooling or sharing these resources to my virtual machine. That's why I call them that one of the important definition of the cloud computing is sharing of your resources. So we talk about this shared pool of configurable resources. Another term is convenient and on demand. The purpose of the convenient and on demand, that you should access your resources, you manage your resources as per your demand. Assume that you need to build two virtual machines, you can simply do that. So assume you need to build two virtual machine probably midnight. Of course you need to do it, and for that you can simply access your cloud computing environment and build it without here important term is cloud computing provider cannot say that they are this particular service is available from say morning 6 to 9 or morning 9 to 6 p.m. No, it should be 24/7. It should be 24/7. That's why we use the term on demand. Whenever is consumer or user want to build or use the resources, they should. It should be convenient. He's easily accessible and use this environment to build your their resources, virtual machine, storage, whatever. Now the term here, rapidly provision and release, is more related to your building your resources. So if assume, let's go back to your drawing board once more, and where we are going to talk about what does it mean by rapidly provision and release your resource. Let's assume that in the midnight or in the any point of time, your manager or your company asks you to build two virtual machines. It means now you are supposed to build a two virtual machine because business required to build two virtual machines. That's fine. Now this virtual machine is only required for say 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, business don't require this two virtual machine, but instead they just need one virtual machine. One. It means what you need to do, you need to terminate or delete this one. That we are meaning as per the time, as per requirement. If you want to, if you are provision this virtual machine, you can do it. If they want to release this virtual machine, you can simply release it by just with the ease of your portal or you can environment. You can go there, access your machine, delete it, create a new one without worrying about your internal infrastructure or architecture. Then we talk about without taking help from service provider. Of course, you need to capable enough that you should log in or access your environment and build all your infrastructure without taking help from your service provider. You can do it in the without, or you can say that management effort. So that what is the basic cloud computing definition. The next term is the cloud compute. When you talk about the cloud computing, is composed of 5 essential characteristic, 3 service model, and 4 deployment model. Let's understand all these 3. The 5 essential characteristics. One, we talk about on-demand self-service. We already discussed about it. You should access your environment. You can manage it by yourself, and it should be on demand. On demand means at any point of time, anytime, based on your requirement, you can build it. Now the term broad network access, is more related to your global, and that what in the previous slide we also talk about something like ubiquitous. So this the meaning is you can access it from anywhere. The broad network access means you can access your environment from anywhere, either you in the mid of the jungle, mid of the ocean, in the air, or any part. The only requirement of accessing your cloud is internet. It means if you have an internet and you may have some device, something like your mobile or your tablet or your laptop or desktop, whatever you have, you can simply use that to access your environment. That what would mean by broad network access. You can access your environment from anywhere using any compatible device through which you can manage your environment. The next term is resource pooling. Resource pooling, we already discussed about it. You are sharing your resources to the multiple virtual machines, like, or storage, whatever the different component, different infrastructure you are sharing with multiple uh, virtual machines. Okay. The term rapid elasticity again is mean that as per your requirement, you can increase you can provision the machines or deprovision it. We already discussed about it. As per the requirement, you can simply add virtual machine or reduces as per your business case. If business want a 2 or 10 virtual machine for 10 weeks, just build it that. After 10 weeks, they only want 2 virtual machine. You can simply reduce the 2, rest of 8 and use the 2. How it can help you? It can help you in 2 ways. One, you just need, if your requirement is for 10 virtual machine, just pay for it. Now after 2 weeks, your requirement is only 2 virtual machine, just pay for 2, reduce the 8, now you start paying for 2. That is the most important aspect. Another term is measured services. Measured services is more related to how you should know how much you need to pay for it. Let's assume that you have consumed you built one virtual machine you have used for 30 hours. Okay, now you also created a storage. Probably you have created 10 GB of storage which you have used for a month. So how you should know that you have consumed 30 hours, and how should know that you have created 10 GB and you need to pay for it? Something like your electricity meter. You should know at the end of the month before paying it that how much you have consumed and you need to pay for it, and there should be transparent. So your service provider and you know how much you have consumed and you can pay for it. That what does it mean by this measured services. You should how much your time you have consumed or resources you have used, just pay for it. This is what we mean by the essential characteristic. The next thing, service model. Let's talk about the service model. The service models are 3 major types. One is known as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. 3 major service model. Once again, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. To understand these terms, let's go back to our whiteboard and try to understand it. Now, let's assume that you are working on your on-premises environment. You have your own data center. In the data center, you have your assume this data center. This data center will require the electricity. This will also require your cooling. This will also require your security, all personnel who's managing this environment. So this is all required to manage your environment. In this data center, we may have your networking components or switches. We may have a storage. And we also have a servers. So this is a rack. In this rack, we may have a server. Now, once you have a server, what you need to do? Probably the server required what? You need to install the operating system on this server. This operating system may be Windows, Linux, or different or others one. Once you build your operating system on your physical or virtual machine, whatever, then I need to install my middleware, which is middleware is used for what? So that it is something is provided the environment to your application. Then we need to install my database, and then top of it I supposed to install my app, which is my application. So this is the way when someone asks you to build an application or infrastructure, you need to perform all these jobs. You should have a data center. In this data center, you should have your server. Then on top of it, you need to install operating system. On top of it, you install the middleware, then database and application. This is what you required. Now let's assume that being a user, you outsource up to this line to some service provider, probably whatever the service provider is. Now the service provider is going to manage your data center, your servers. If there's a problem in your data center, like cooling, electricity will be managed by them. If the problem in your hardware, like your RAM get failed, your motherboard get failed, everything will be taken care by your service provider. But it means Rest of the work you need to still perform. So this entire job you need to still own. If there's a problem in operating system, you need to do it. You need to install it, manage it, your middleware, database, and application. This kind of support or outsource we call as a infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service. Now let's go and talk about the second term, which is known as platform as a service. Now assume you have now outsourced up to this line. It means you ask your service provider not only manage your hardware or data center, but also manage, install operating system and manage it, install middleware, database, and manage it. This is mainly used by the developer where they want to build their application and upload, and they want service provider to manage all the underlying infrastructure. Now, the minute your service provider are managing your IaaS plus your operating system, middleware, and database, I call it as a platform as a service. Here, as a user, you just need to create your code or build your code and upload it, and all the underlying infrastructure will be taken care by your service provider, and they provide the service. You just need to worry about your code, and we call it a platform as a service. Now let's go and talk about the application. Software as a service. In a software as a service, we actually outsource everything. Now even your application will be taken care by your service provider. So this is known as software as a service. It means you're supposed to be a user like Gmail. You just go and create your account, start using it. You're not worrying how your email are flowing. What if your email stop working? How if your infrastructure goes down? Everything will be taken care by service provider, and you are using as a subscriber or normal user. You're not worrying about the code, not worrying about the operating system, middleware, database, server, data center. Everything will be taken care by your service provider. That we call as a software as a service. In a software as a service, you just need to pay whatever you are going to use it, and then you can simply enjoy your life. Probably you are not worrying about the entire infrastructure. So in this model, what we talk about, what is the infrastructure as a service, what is the platform as a service, and what is the software as a service. Let's go back and talk about what is the other terms. Now we have a deployment model. So there are three deployment model, which is known as private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. These are related to deployment model. To understand these models, let's again go back to our whiteboard and try to understand it and understand what the meaning of these three deployment model. Now let's assume that you have this is a cloud, this is a private cloud, and this is a public cloud. This is a public cloud. Let's understand the difference between these two. First of all, the private cloud. Please remember, when you are in private cloud, you are the owner. It means all the resources like your server, your storage, your networking, your data center is owned by you. Sometime you may install or build your server and storage into some others facility which is owned by someone else. It's like you are just asking them to, so you are just paying for the floor or the cooling charges, electricity bill, but you are building your servers are yours, but you are building infrastructure in some other facility which is owned by them or someone else. Or you can also build these servers and storage or infrastructure in your own premises, but these resources will be owned by you. You are the person who owned it. It means you need to go and buy it. Apart from it, you need to also buy the application, license of the application, software, tools, everything was yours. You are the owner. So you are the owner. Whereas in the public, you are using as a rent. You are not the owner. You are just paying whatever you are going to use. If you're consuming how many services, probably what you are using for 1 month, that's fine. Go and use it and pay for 1 month. But you are not the owner. Please remember, the major difference is private is the ownership, public no ownership. Second, we'll talk about the usage. Who all the users? In a private, the users are your own users. It means these users are your employees, your associates, your vendor, whoever. But this is yours. In public is the general public, anyone like you, me, someone else, any organization. It is open for everyone. It is not restricted to some specific user. It is everyone. This is what is the public and private. A part of it, in private, you may have some issue with your, probably major issue with the public are security. So public, you may have a security related issue because your data is stored on some others, third party or some public service provider like AWS, Amazon or Google. But in private, it is on your own premises or third party premises, which is managed by you. So here we may don't have such security issues which you may face in the public one. Then we have a hybrid cloud. Let's assume that when hybrid cloud means when you're using both the services. It means you are using private services as well as public services, both for your organization. I call as a hybrid. In hybrid, all the advantages of public and private will become your advantages, or disadvantages of your public and private becomes your disadvantages. So that we call a hybrid cloud. So we talk about public cloud, private cloud and hybrid cloud. Now let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages. We already discussed few of it, like your availability. Your cloud should be always available. It should not provide something like it, you can't say that it is working from 9 to 6, not available after 6. So it should be always accessible, available. Accessibility should be easy. We already talk about it. Easy accessibility. Scalable, of course, it should be scalable. If you want 10 virtual machine, use it. Now you want to add 10 more, do it. You want to add 10 more, do it. No problem. Next is multi-tenancy. The meaning of the multi-tenancy is, let's assume that you are running one virtual machine, or sorry, one host. In this host, you probably running a multiple virtual machine, and owner or and you have given this virtual machine to the different people. Probably this one rented to the X1, this can be Y, this can be Z. So instead of one, you are giving your host your virtual machine to the multiple tenant. So instead of getting a one tenant rent from one, you are getting a tenant for rent from three. That's what called a multi-tenancy. Next is disaster recovery. The purpose of disaster recovery, let's assume that this virtual machine is running from your on premises, and probably you can build your another virtual machine on your cloud, so that if this goes down, you can you can fail over this machine to your cloud and access it from it. So it's something like disaster recovery scenarios. User is connected to this machine. If this fails, user start connected to the cloud machine. So we can also use for the disaster recovery. Next is cost of ownership. Is cost of ownership, or I can say the meaning of the cost of ownership is that you're not owning the resources, you're not paying the upfront cost, you're not paying for the cost, you just using for the rent. Okay, and whatever the period you are going to use, you just need to pay for it. Again, meter services we already discussed. It should help you to know how much you have consumed and you need to pay for it. Now the downtime is more related to your part of the disadvantage. So downtime, because infrastructure can be prone to your outages, being is used by the humans or managed by the humans, it can be prone to your human errors also, or hardware can be prone to your outages also. Vulnerable to attack. The purpose of vulnerable to attack, because all your resources which is running on your cloud are accessible through the internet. When anything is exposed to internet, it can be vulnerable to your attack. So you may see that, you can see that your instance which is running, your services which is running when exposed to internet can be attacked, because everything is open to the internet. Security, you may have a lots of security issues, and we can talk about in one of the separate slide. So here we just talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Now we are going to talk about the famous 12 cloud computing security issues, and these are data breach, access management, insecure interfaces, account hijacking, system vulnerabilities, advanced persistent threat, data loss, malicious insider, insufficient due diligence, abuse and nefarious use, denial of service, and shared technology vulnerabilities. Use cases. The first use case for the cloud computing is the file storage. What is the purpose of the file storage here? Probably you can store your file into the cloud. So if your user is currently accessing your file server, which is on premises, we can simply store your file into the cloud, and now user start accessing your file from the cloud, and you're not supposed to worry about your storage capacity, scalability. Everything will be taken cloud. So in case when you are usually you face a problem with respect to storage capacity in cloud, no issues. It can be scalable and added more space when you are reached to a space, reach to your threshold or limitation. Next one is can be your test and development. We can also use for test and development, and purpose of the test and development is actually to do a testing before moving your application to the production. So we can also do the test and development in cloud instead of building your own infrastructure in your on premises. To do the test and development, I can use the cloud for test and development. We can also use for disaster recovery. The purpose of the disaster recovery is basically used. So assume that your currently users are accessing your server which is on premises. In case any disaster happened, I can build my standby server in my cloud, and now user will start accessing from the cloud. So in case primary goes down, I can access it from the cloud. That is also one of the way. I can also use for backup. I can create my I can use the or I can instead of using my on-premises storage or my tape libraries or tape drives, I can keep my backup into the storage, cloud storage, and I can use it to download or when I need to recover it. I can also use for proof of concept, like instead of building your own virtual your environment to do the POC, like test an application before you want to buy it, or you want to test how it works for your organization. You want to do some features, you can look for it, test it for it. You can also do it. Last one is going global. So if you want to go global, you can simply move to the cloud, and from all your offices or user can directly access your cloud via your application from the cloud. So this is what we talk about the use cases. Let's do in the demo. Let's see the demo of your AWS, Azure, and Google, and see how it looks like and how we can use basics of the cloud and how can I basically use it for the creating my resources. In AWS, Amazon Web Services, you see here the purpose of AWS is to build your public cloud. I can use all the services in my AWS. I can simply use my like EC2, your storage, database, migration. I can use for migration, networking, media services, mobile services, analytics, management tool, machine learning, lots of things. If I want to create my virtual machine, I simply go and see the EC2. In the EC2, you can see your different images which is available, which you can use to build your environment. And I can get number of type of the virtual machine, which is a predefined with respect to CPU and memory. I can use it based on my requirement. So I can also use it. Let's log into the Azure and see how it looks like. I've logged into my Azure, and you can see the Azure portal. Here on the left, you can see all the different services which is available. If I want, I can see the all services. Under the all services, I can see the like compute one, different available, networking, storage, web mobile, database, analytics, lots of services are available. Here also, I can simply select my virtual machine. In this virtual machine, I can create my, I can select my different type of the images which is shown here, and I can also use the different virtual machine type of the virtual machine in Azure. Now let's log into the Google and see how its interface looks like. This is a Google Cloud Platform interface, and here also you can see all the different options, something like your APIs, your compute, your storage, networking, tools, all the things are available. Here, if I want to create machine, I can simply select my compute engine, and the compute engine, I can see the different virtual machine is available, which I can simply use to build my virtual machine or build my environment, right? So Like here, I can see the different type. I can see the different options which is available with the disk type of the machine and all. So this is what we have talked about with the three different type of the cloud computing interfaces and how to use it. Thank you.